Everybody. Hey, everybody. This is Mike Hofman at Glamour Magazine. Thanks for joining us today, and we're really excited. We're here with Natalia Oberti Noguera, the founder and CEO of Pipeline Fellowship, which is an angel investing boot camp for women. She's also one of the stars of The Making of Me, which is presented by Clinique, and which is a Glamour series that features women talking about their career paths. And this is part of Clinique's hashtag Start Better campaign. And so our theme today is to talk about women starting businesses, and welcome Natalia.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Glamour, Clinique, and Mike.
Excellent. So why don't you take a minute just to tell our viewers a little bit more about the Pipeline Fellowship?
I'd love to tell everyone who's listening about Pipeline Fellowship. So you did a great job. It's an angel investing bootcamp for women, and I launched it in April 2011. And since then, we have graduated over 80 women. We started in New York City. We then headed to Boston, then the Bay Area. This past spring, we expanded into Chicago and DC. And this fall, we are launching programs for the very first time in Atlanta, Seattle, and LA. And we continue to grow. And one of the reasons, which is very tweetable, so for those of you who are listening, is because entrepreneurs are everywhere, capital isn't. And so I'm super passionate about activating local capital for local entrepreneurs and making sure that really fantastic women-led for-profit social ventures get a chance to secure that funding that they need to get to the next level, to hashtag start better.
And so talk to me a little bit about advising women entrepreneurs who maybe haven't started a business before. What's some of your beginner's advice, and what are some of the issues that someone will face kind of in the early days of starting a business?
Yeah, so I judge a lot of pitch events, and I enjoy it a lot. And I'm a huge believer of tough love. It's important to have supporters and cheerleaders, etc. And entrepreneurs, sometimes they just need a reality check. And I'd say that one of the main issues that I see for a lot of first-time women and people of color entrepreneurs is that they tend to be what I call solopreneurs, meaning that they're a one-person shop. And so the thing is that if someone is actually indeed looking for funding to grow their business, they're going to be taken more seriously if they have already assembled a team that will be able to get them to that next level. And investors want to get a sense that an entrepreneur knows exactly what she is good at, and she has surrounded herself with other teammates who can, fulfill those other skills, that might be missing. And so if someone is actually interested in growing their business and they still haven't gotten, that second co-founder or built a team around them, then I'd say that they have to do their homework, assemble that team before going out to secure funding.
And so if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to build that team, how do you go out and kind of sell your idea? Do you need a business plan? Can you do it just with a PowerPoint? What are sort of the steps to assembling that kind of a team?
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of hashtag more voices, and I don't often quote white guys, so this is actually almost unprecedented that the first quotation I share is of a white guy, and it's from Seth Godin's book Tribes, and in it he says that a leader isn't a leader until his first follower. And it's a really great perspective in terms of even thinking of, hey, you want to convince someone to give you money, you haven't even convinced someone to join your team or to mentor you or to advise you. And so I'd say that the first part is, and this is another handy tweetable tip, is if you're looking for money, ask for feedback. And the reason that I think that's such a helpful frame of mind to have is because it's so often that potential relationship, whether it's adding a colleague to the team or whether it's securing that funding, it just starts with a conversation. And having that conversation, asking for that advice is a way that a potential investor, for example, gets a sense on how someone works, gets a sense on how someone thinks. And my favorite is that it takes down that barrier between the you and them, and it creates an us. And so once a potential investor has become committed to a mission, to a founder, to a CEO, then it's probably easier to ultimately convert them in terms of also getting them on board financially.
How long do you think it typically takes between the first time you sort of meet an investor and then actually being able to maybe close an angel round?
It varies so much because there's so many different factors when talking about when closing an angel round. Just to be quite candid, there is that famed term that we hear a lot, which is pattern recognition, and that idea that people support, and financially, including those who look like them, those who make them feel familiar, who remind them of themselves. And so I'd say that the reason I'm kind of providing that preface / context is because I have heard of some, young white guys who they pitch, over some drinks, and immediately the older white guy writes them a check, to, hearing of, some women entrepreneurs who they have been called back several times, ultimately to be told, actually we're moving with someone else. And so I'd say that versus thinking about how quickly to raise a round, I'd say, this just goes back to the hashtag, which I love, start better. It's how can you fundraise better, right? How can you have a strategy around it, whether it's, stepping up to the plate to actually pitch, because not many people know that it's not just that women and people of entrepreneurs aren't getting funded, it's that we're also not pitching. So we're not even stepping up to the plate. And I've narrowed it down to 3 main reasons. The first one is, candidly, we're not being invited into the room. The second one is we might not realize that we have a scalable business model that could benefit from angel or VC financing. And then the third is, this is where I out myself, not as an LGBTQ Latina, even though I am. I out myself as being pro lean in, because I notice that there are a lot of women and people of entrepreneurs who hesitate. They think that they're going to either win or lose, if they step up to the plate. And what they don't realize is that even if they don't secure funding, when they're pitching, they might actually gain a lot of really great advice from these experts in the room. And those investors in the room might not actually be interested in investing in their startup. However, they might know someone outside of the room who might be interested. And if the entrepreneur had not shared her idea, these investors would not have known to connect her with their broader network.
So you have to sort of put yourself out there in order to, achieve whatever your goal is, whether it's raising money or just, building your team. So I'm curious. You talked about, an enterprise being scalable enough to be worthy of angel investment. That's a kind of business concept that may or may not be familiar to all of our viewers. Can you just describe what you mean by that?
Yeah. So and kind of step back, let's talk about bootstrapping. As an entrepreneur, you bootstrap, then you get, money from friends and family, then you get money from angel investors, then you get, money from VCs, et cetera, et cetera. So it's almost like this ladder, that you're climbing in a sense. And I'd say that the first part is the bootstrapping gets very glamorized. And one of my favorite sayings, actually, the remark happened maybe a year ago at our Bay Area Angel Investing Conference. That's an event, Pipeline Fellowship Conference is an event open to the public. And Nicole Sanchez, formerly she was working at K4 Capital, she said how bootstrapping is so glamorized, particularly in the tech startup world and the blogosphere, et cetera. And actually for a lot of our communities, it's simply called living. And I was like, oh, that's a very heavy-duty thing to bring up, and I'm glad that you're underscoring that. And then for my part, I often kind of remind people that a lot of women and people, entrepreneurs, might not have the friends and family for the friends and family round. And so that's why we have positioned Pipeline Fellowships Angels in Training, or for those of for anyone who watches Shark Tank, I call them our sharks in training. I position them as that friends and family so that they can get that that critical capital injection to get them to that next level. And then one of the frequently asked questions I get is like, what is an angel? And so I tend to share like my more optimistic definitions, such as, well, first of all, it tends to be, you know, those people who are not related to you and
Right.
who are interested in funding your business. And my favorite definition of angel investing is it's smart money. So the concept that it's not just the financial capital, it's also the human capital, kind of like, you know, the skill sets that they can bring to the table, as well as the social capital, the contacts and the networks and relationships that they can help the entrepreneur leverage, that really makes the difference. And that's something that I'm super passionate about, because it's that 3-in-1 that it's really important for us to help get more women entrepreneurs access to that. And I'd say that in terms of specifically your question about scalability, the reason that it's important is because ultimately, yeah, angel investees are there to help. They're also there to make money. And if there isn't a chance to make a return greater than what they're putting down in terms of money, then there isn't that incentive in order to fund something. And so that idea of scalability, you know, when you're talking about, let's say, a service type of business, which tends to be very high touch, you know, might not have that potential to grow, you know, very quickly. Whereas, let's just say that there's obviously like an app where, you know, from in a week, you know, there could be thousands or hundreds of thousands of new subscribers. So that's what, you know, in terms of the growth potential, that's what is meant when people talk about scalability.
And so your business obviously is growing very rapidly. What are some of the challenges that you've faced as you've been moving into all of these new cities?
Yeah, so I'd say our secret sauce really is that we are high touch. So, you know, I am myself coming from that model in terms of making sure that we're curating these awesome, diverse groups of pipeline fellows in each city. And, you know, I'm super passionate about activating local capital for, you know, local entrepreneurs. We just launched our Atlanta, our Seattle, our LA Pipeline Fellowship Angel Investing boot camps for the first time, and we went to the Bay Area for our third time, so that's really exciting. And we're going to be starting now for our spring 2015 Angel Investing boot camps, primarily on the East Coast, so Boston, Chicago, DC, Miami. They want us to go to Philly and Pittsburgh, so and you know, that's something that we're really excited about. So I'd say I grew up moving around quite a bit because my father used to work for the UN. So at a very early age, I learned two things. The first one is that hopefully there are other ways to help change the world that are not necessarily the NGO route, and that are hopefully like more efficient and entrepreneurial, we can say. And then the other lesson was that each city has its own culture. And so with that in mind, each time that we look to expand to a new city, we really make sure to plug into local influencers and, you know, both entrepreneurs who are on the ground, who are actually engaging us, emailing us, letting us know that it's super hard to secure funding for, you know, in their respective cities, and they're encouraging us, inviting us to launch in their cities. And so making sure that we keep that you know, in mind, that it's not like this cookie cutter type of growth
Every
strategy.
city is different.
It's a curated one in that sense.
Mhm. And so I'm curious, you know, let's say that I'm, you know, a woman starting a business. I have a little bit of a team around me. I have a business plan. You know, maybe I even have the first customer or two signed up. You know, what are and I'm not in one of those places where there's a strong infrastructure for investors already. Not one of the larger cities you mentioned. You know, what are the next few things that I should be doing in order to get to that next level?
Yeah, so great question. Well, the first thing that I will say is already kudos to you, because you have your first, second customer. You mentioned that, and the reason that I'm going back to that is I have a very huge preference for startups that are what is called first user founders or first user CEOs. So that the CEO slash founder is that first customer. So the reason that I have a preference for that is because that means that the founder gets the market because she is the market. And so she understands the pain points, and she understands who else could be that customer. And I have heard some entrepreneurs who say, well, like, where can I find, asking others, other successful entrepreneurs, where did you find your first customers? And that usually makes me a little bit, gives me pause. Because it's like, hey, you should have an idea. For me personally, that's the type of business that I like. That it already is meeting a market. Like it has identified the problem, and because it has identified the problem, it knows who those potential customers could be. In terms of what you said, what happens for people who aren't living in Silicon Valley or Silicon Alley? That is actually one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about just expanding Pipeline Fellowship as an example, because a while back I read this article that was touting how there are all these entrepreneurs who are blossoming in the Midwest, and the point of the article was saying that but there really isn't capital. And so the guy who wrote it, his advice was like to the entrepreneurs, move. And I was like, not everyone can or wants, has the ability to move. And why should the answer be a brain drain, especially when locally there might be, people, obviously for me, I'm looking at getting more women and people of color to get on the other side, on the investing side, so that they can then financially support this thriving startup ecosystems that are cropping up in so many places that are not Silicon Valley and are not Silicon Alley. And we talk a lot about diversity, and of course, I, as an LGBTQ Latina, I think about it daily. There are other types of diversity that people are bringing up, such as age. Not all entrepreneurs need to be young 20-something-year-olds, and of course Ivy League college dropouts. They can be older. It can be like the encore career, right? It can be someone's, what's it called, like mid-phase career, etc. And the other aspect of diversity is it can be geographic diversity. They're really, and that's one of the reasons that I love Twitter, because through hashtags and through this platform, we're able to connect with so many really brilliant entrepreneurs who are excited about being able to tap into the resources that are out there.
Great. Well, Natalia Oberti Noguera, and it's Pipeline Fellows on Twitter, at Pipeline Fellows. So please follow that. You can also catch Natalia in The Making of Me, which is at video.glamour.com. It's a series we're very proud of. Features 5 great women, including Natalia, talking about their career paths. So thank you so much for joining. Natalia, thank you. And we'll have another hangout soon. Bye.
Bye.